limits of Western air defenses. Missiles are through the West Asia skies. The horizon from Tel Aviv to Dubai is a jagged line. Israeli agents tracked the bodyguard's personal vehicle, mapping the exact moment the leadership converged. Satellite imagery, intercepted comms, and human intelligence converged on one conclusion. The exact time the supreme leader was spending extended hours official contact. As Operation Epic Fury and Lion's Roar shattered Iranian defenses, U.S. surveillance assets monitored the compound in real time. Drones provided overwatch. Electronic warfare platforms blinded nearby radar. Then came the order. Precision-guided bunker-buster munitions were released. They were designed to puncture reinforced structures before detonating. Khamenei, along with the IRGC's top brass, were killed. Iran is now trapped in a cycle of grief and violence. With the death toll rising, the streets are filled with chants, tears, and screams for retribution. The man who ruled for decades is gone. Iranian forces have vowed to avenge the death. U.S. and Israel want to finish their job in Iran. West Asia continues to burn in the fury.
That's the latest at this hour. This is a continuous coverage on the situation in West Asia. Iran is at war with the United States and Israel. Americans often thank you for watching. Goodbye. We're ensuring that the Iranian regime direct terrorist armies outside of their borders. If your action is taken now, your action will be taken in the future. Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the news today, your primetime destination news, newsmakers, talking points. A happy Holi to each and every one of you out there. But first, I want to tell you what's our big talking point this Tuesday night. Donald Trump has just shifted the war goalposts again. Now says he's ready to support armed groups in Iran to topple the government. Is he daydreaming or does he have a plan? Among my special guests is the noted news presenter Mehdi Hassan, joins me from Washington. I'll also look at what role should India now be really playing, particularly with oil prices rising. Syed Akbaruddin, who's tracked the area for years, will join me. Special guests as always, but first, let's bring you the top 10 developments on that escalating war in West Asia. The death toll in Iran from the ongoing conflict with the United States and Israel has risen to over 780. Iranian agencies claim the country has faced more than 1,000 strikes with over 500 sites hit since the war began on 28 February. With Iran attacking U.S.-linked sites across the Gulf region, the U.S. decides to shut its embassies in Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Jordan. Non-emergency personnel in these embassies are ordered to leave immediately. A top Iranian official has said that Tehran is ready to hold negotiations with the U.S. and Israel with dignity. Earlier, President Trump claimed that Tehran requested talks after their leadership and command structure was hit, but claimed it was too late. With Iran shutting down the strategic Straits of Hormuz, government sources say India currently has crude oil and petroleum product stocks sufficient for 50 days. The government, however, exploring alternative suppliers to meet the demand. A day after Tehran claimed its nuclear facility had been struck, global watchdog IAEA confirmed that Iran's Natanz nuclear enrichment site sustained some damage, but any radiation leak is ruled out for now. Iran holds a funeral procession for victims of the strike on the girls' school in Minab. Thousands of Iranians attend the funeral procession for over 160 Iranian schoolgirls killed in the U.S.-Israel strikes on Saturday.
no election, no politician is wrong.
Israel rules out sending boots on the ground into Iran, but its forces have crossed into Lebanese territory in operations against the Hezbollah, which has aligned with Iran and fired missiles towards Israel. President Trump intensifies his criticism of UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for refusing to allow the use of British bases for strikes and for voicing concerns over Washington's actions. Trump says Starmer has not been helpful, expresses disappointment over the current state of US-UK relations. Prime Minister Modi steps up his outreach to Gulf nations amidst the escalating war over the past 48 hours. He has spoken to the heads of state of 8 countries, stressing the safety and security of Indian nationals residing in the region. Indian nationals stranded in the Middle East begin returning home with flight operations partly resuming. Several commercial services are bringing passengers back to India after days of airspace closures and widespread cancellations, disrupted travel across the Gulf. But the big story that's breaking at the moment, US officials now saying that Donald Trump is ready to support armed Iranian groups to overthrow the government in the Republic. A short while ago, Israeli forces have targeted Iran's assembly of experts who are tasked to choose the next leader of Iran, leading to possibility of more deaths in the high-ranking members of the regime in Iran. The Israeli army also conducting a fresh wave of strikes in Tehran, Qom and Isfahan, targeting ballistic missile manufacturing sites as well. So clearly America not letting up and carrying on the escalation with Israel really in a frontal role at the moment. So a US official claiming that Trump is open to supporting armed groups. This is another change in goalposts by the US president. Only yesterday he said that he was not interested in regime change, was not the goal. He wanted Israel to end wanted Iran to end its nuclear enrichment program. I want to go to guests who are joining me at this moment from the ground. Mayan Hoffman, journalist from Tel Aviv, is with us. I want to come to you, Mayan, for a moment. What are you picking up at the moment? Has it been a relatively calm day in Israel? Yesterday we saw a series of missiles and drones directed at different parts of your country.
In Iraq.
Yes, it's been much calmer today than yesterday, although there have been certainly some sirens that took place later, kind of mid-afternoon today. Most of the action has actually been up north, Hezbollah rockets and drones being fired into northern Israel, where Israel is obviously also operating against Hezbollah in Lebanon. The most exciting attacks have gone the other direction, Israel operating in Iran. We saw the target of 88 people coming together, the municipal votes to vote for the new supreme leader, and of course Israel managed to take them all out at the same time. That's been a moment of celebration here in Israel. But by and large, yeah, it's been a bit of a quieter Purim holiday than we expected.
So you're saying that Israel believes it has taken out all the Iranian leaders who had gathered to elect a successor to Khamenei. Is that what you're saying? Is that what Israeli sources are confirming, that their attacks have targeted that assembly that had gathered to elect a successor to Khamenei, and that they've been taken out?
Well, they haven't been able to confirm that all 88 have been taken out, but they've certainly been able to confirm that there was a direct strike on the building, and they assume that the majority, of course, have been, if not all of them, and that they were able to stop the vote today with Israeli intelligence and Israeli strikes.
Okay, Mayan Hoffman, thanks very much for joining me from there with that important piece of news. Meanwhile, Professor Zamir Abbas Jafri is the Al-Mustafa International University in Qom is joining me. I appreciate you joining us. You are in Qom, sir, which is the very place where that assembly was being held of senior Iranian clerics and members of the assembly to elect a new leader. The Israelis are claiming that they've targeted that area around the assembly a short while ago. What are you picking up in Qom itself? Have there been strikes in and around where you are, sir?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sardesai, for having me on the show.
And yes, where I'm located, approximately, say around 1 kilometer approximately in that range, the attack took place. And I'm very surprised that we live in a world where people come on the show and they say that we have hit and killed people illegally, and with so much disdain, that they have so clean face, and they're able to say that completely illegal criminal attack. I mean, you can't expect anything else. The first parliament of Iran after 1979, when the Islamic Revolution came about, the first parliament was bombed through terrorist attacks by United States. So they have this history of killing people. They have only two ways. Either we'll kill you or you submit to us. We have the third way. We'll never submit to a tyrant. That is what the message of Iran is, and that is what the message of Imam Hussein was.
Can I understand from you, Professor, what you have been seeing around you in Qom? Are people now all restricted to their homes in bunkers because the United States is threatening? They've just threatened parts of Tehran and Isfahan, asking civilians to hide in safer places. Are you getting? Is there a fear factor of these bombs being dropped by the Israelis?
Mr. Sardesai, I'm glad that you asked this, because there are two ways. We are Shia Muslims. We never fear death. We love them. We love Imam Hussein. Imam Hussein taught us, whenever a tyrant comes in front of you and he asks you to bend down, you'd rather die on your feet rather than bend to a tyrant. So when I was driving here, I was driving towards my home and came back because of this show to this media center. The life was normal all around. And what is very surprising is, in Iran, after Iftar, which is Mahr Ramzan is going on, people gather in different roundabouts all over Iran. And in Qom, there are more than 50 locations where people gather on the streets in thousands, and they do matam, and they do sinazani. And they say, we are the lovers of Imam Hussein. You want to kill us? Yes. So there is a tyrant who's sitting there in Washington and Tel Aviv, and they want to scare you, and they think that they can scare you, and they think we fear death. No, we don't fear death. So if they want to be the tyrant and the aggressor, and they want to kill people illegally, criminally, they will pay the price finally, because they're the most hated people in this world right now. That is for sure.
Okay. Professor Jeffrey, for joining me there with your very strong words. Stay safe. And I thank you very much for joining us even at this difficult time. Now, the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei over the weekend was projected by the United States-Israel alliance as a decisive strike. What it has done, though, is triggered even more confusion over America's real objectives. The Trump administration, particularly the president, is shifting goalposts all the time. One speaking about regime change, then about nuclear missiles, now speaking about militias and nuclear weapons. Does Donald Trump really have a plan in mind, or is he simply walking into this war with Netanyahu taking the frontal role? Take a look at today's top story.
The killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in normal circumstances would be seen as a victory for an American president. But nothing about the killing was normal. The attacks took place without any legal backing, in the middle of negotiations that were being seen as a success. And now, President Donald Trump is having a tough time selling a war to the people of America who are wary of wars in distant lands. First of all, what is the objective? On Sunday, it was regime change.
Iranian military, police, to lay down your arms and receive full immunity or face certain death. It will be certain death. Won't be pretty. I call upon all Iranian patriots who yearn for freedom to seize this moment, to be brave, be bold, be heroic, and take back your country. America is with you.
On Monday, Trump shifted the goalpost.
Our objectives are clear. First, we're destroying Iran's missile capabilities, and you see that happening on an hourly basis, and their capacity to produce brand new ones, and pretty good ones they make. Second, we're annihilating their navy. We've knocked out already 10 ships. They're at the bottom of the sea. Third, we're ensuring that the world's #1 sponsor of terror can never obtain a nuclear weapon. Never going to have a nuclear weapon.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio gave one more reason for launching the strike first.
We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
Donald Trump came to power promising there won't be any wars, but has started one, which, if it does not end soon, could probably become the mother of all wars, drawing in the entire Gulf. What can bring Iran, a country which has lost its leader, back to negotiating table? Nobody seems to have the answer. Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, let's raise the big question once again tonight. Is Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu in particular driving this war now, and Donald Trump simply tagging along? Is Donald Trump constantly changing the goalposts with no clear endgame in mind? Is war a weapon of mass distraction for Donald Trump from his domestic troubles? And joining me now from Washington, D.C. is a special guest joined by Mehdi Hassan, editor-in-chief and CEO of ZTO News, one of the world's leading opinion makers, sharp opinions as always. Mehdi, appreciate you joining us. You're joining us on a day when we are hearing news of unprecedented attacks once again on Tehran, possibility of a building where the assembly to elect a successor to Ali Khamenei were meeting. How do you see this? Israel and the United States now relentless in their attacks. Do you really believe Iran can hold out?
It is a big question of our time. We are in a very, very dangerous moment for the world, for the region. We're all affected by this, a massive escalation in the Middle East, a completely unnecessary, unprovoked war, a war of aggression against Iran, whatever your views of Iran. And people can be very critical, as I am, of Iran's government, of its human rights record, whatever you want to be critical of, its nuclear program. This was a war of aggression, a war of choice launched by the United States and Israel. They've all but admitted it. Their rationales keep shifting by the day as to why they're bombing Iran. We're talking, Rajdeep, on a day where Donald Trump says, well, it's too late to talk, even though on Sunday he said he wanted to talk. So they're all over the place. As you say, we're escalating. More and more targets are getting hit. They've already killed the head of state, the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, on day one, completely illegal under international law. And they've got no strategy to end this. They've got no end goal in sight. They've not explained to the American public or the wider international community as to why they are doing it and when they plan to stop. And we're seeing it escalate around the region. Americans are being asked to leave the Middle East. People are being killed in Gulf countries. Lebanon now is facing an Israeli ground invasion as we speak. 50 people killed in Lebanon, 750 people killed in Iran, people killed in Israel. The whole thing is a disaster.
You're saying it's a disaster, but when I speak to Israeli guests or indeed American guests close to the establishment, they say this is a just war. That's the word that's being used, a just war to stop Iran from exporting terror or becoming a nuclear country that can destabilize the region and the world.
So some of us who studied philosophy and theology in university will remember the criteria for a just war is that it has to be a last resort, has to be an act of self-defense, all other options have to be exhausted. That clearly wasn't the case. Rajib, you don't have to take my word for it. Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, stood in Congress yesterday, spoke to reporters and said the imminent threat, this is the legal justification for their attack, the imminent threat was not against the US, as many of us pointed out it wasn't. He said that Israel was planning to attack Iran, and because American news knew Israel was planning to attack Iran. America had to attack first, because once Israel attacked Iran, Iran would attack America. Think about the illogicality of that position. Rather than just stop Israel from illegally attacking Iran, America decided we will attack first and say it's an imminent threat on us. As even senior Democratic Party lawmakers are saying now, Rajat, even pro-Israel Democrats are openly saying an imminent threat to Israel is not a threat against the United States. Our country is not the same as Israel. Israel's interests are not America's interests. And I think that's becoming a very fascinating political debate here in the U.S., the shifting terrain on America's relationship with Israel. Of course, Israeli politicians are going to tell you that this is good for them. They've been wanting to take out Iran for decades. Benjamin Netanyahu admitted just yesterday, I've been yearning, he said, dreaming of doing this for 40 years. Donald Trump is the first president to agree. Don't forget, Bill Clinton, George Bush, Joe Biden, multiple American presidents, Barack Obama, said no when Netanyahu told them to bomb Iran. When George W. Bush and Dick Cheney thought Iran was a step too far, think about how extreme this step is that Donald Trump has taken in his second term for Netanyahu's sake, and I would argue as a distraction from his domestic economic woes and the release of the Epstein files.
Now, you're making an important point. You're claiming that Donald Trump, at least partly, has been driven by the fact to make this a weapon of mass distraction, if I may use that word, from the economic crisis, the Epstein files, and that it is Netanyahu who's leading the aggression, and Donald Trump has chosen to play ball in a way previous American presidents have not. What really has changed? Is it just simply the way Donald Trump is in comparison to his predecessors? Here is a president who has simply no time for the international rules-based order. That's why he's chosen to go along.
This is not a surprise.
Oh, 100%. He has no interest. Other presidents have also, let's just be clear, Rajdeep, other American presidents have also violated international law and the rules-based order. But at least they've pretended that they care about it. They've paid some lip service to it. And as I mentioned, even some of our most hawkish American presidents, George W. Bush, did not bomb Iran. Donald Trump is someone who doesn't care about international law. He doesn't care about national sovereignty. He's a very imperialist-style president. You know, we're taking America back 50, 100, 150 years. We saw what he did in Venezuela at the start of the year. He illegally went in and abducted the sitting president from his bed with his wife and declared himself, Trump declared himself, acting president of Venezuela. He says he now controls and rules Venezuela. He says he wants to take Greenland away from the Europeans, away from Denmark, completely in violation of international law, the UN, and NATO. And of course, so Iran is something, it was very easy for Netanyahu to get Donald Trump to do this. And look, this is not just me saying this. The New York Times has a big piece on how Trump went to war, big deep dive, and their opening paragraph, Rajat, the opening paragraph begins with Benjamin Netanyahu walked into the Oval Office in February to make sure that Donald Trump stays on a path to war. Netanyahu went on Fox last night on Sean Hannity's show and just laughed maniacally when Hannity said, people say that you made Trump do this. It is very clear that this is a war for Israel. What American national interest is there? 6 American service members have been killed. Who's going to tell their families they died for nothing? Gas and oil prices are going up in a country where affordability and price rises, inflation has already been a huge political controversy. And of course, all of our allies, the Gulf allies, are seeing that the U.S. is not a protector of the Gulf. If you're in the UAE and Qatar and Bahrain, you used to look at the U.S. for protection. They were your shield. Now you're getting bombed by Iran, and the Americans can't protect you.
No, but if this all results eventually in the regime change that Donald Trump seems to suggest or seems to hope it will, then Donald Trump could well claim victory. I've been trying to understand whether there is an end game. I've been asking a number of guests. No one has clarity on that. Do you see an end game if Donald Trump is able to put in place in Iran someone who he believes will toe the line of the American-Israel axis? Is that the end game?
So a few things there. Number one, my colleague Swun Subsang here at Zeteo has been reporting from his sources inside the administration that they went into this war with no end game at all. They're trying to work it out in retrospect. After dropping the bombs, they're now trying to work out what is the end strategy, what is the exit strategy, which is a bizarre way to go to war, of course. And this is an administration that is full of incompetent people. Let's just be very clear. In fact, Trump himself admitted, Rajdeep, I don't know if you saw, he said, we did have a plan to replace Khamenei. We had a number 2 and number 3 we had picked, but they got killed as well in the initial bombing. Imagine they killed the people they had wanted to replace Khamenei. That's the kind of incompetence with which they're bombing Iran. Number 2, you say regime change could be the end goal. goal? Well, as I said at the start of the interview, the end goal keeps changing. On the one hand, Donald Trump says regime change. Then he says, no, it's not about the regime. They can stay as long as they get rid of the nuclear program. Then they say, well, it's not about nuclear program. It's about freeing the Iranian people. Then they say, well, actually, it's about the ballistic missiles. They're all over the place when it comes to their actual goal. Everyone can see that. Finally, I would say, we don't know what regime change looks like in Iran. The American record on a regime change is a disaster. Should we talk about Iraq? Should we talk about Afghanistan, where the Taliban are back in charge? Should we talk about Libya, which is a failed state today? Syria, Venezuela, he just took out the president but kept in the rest of the government, didn't bring in the quote-unquote democratic opposition. My worry for Iran is that you don't just lose this government and then have some happy democracy or even the return of the Shah's son. You actually get a civil war in Iran. You actually get a failed state in Iran, which is, by the way, Rajid, what the Israelis want. The Israelis don't want a strong Iran. They don't want a strong Iraq. The Israelis want to be in a neighborhood where they're surrounded by Middle East countries which are fighting internally, which are torn apart internally. Your Lebanons, your Syrias, your Iraqs. That's what they want, because they then get to be the top dog in the region.
There is a much of what you're saying. Surely the American public out there knows the changing of the goalposts, the fact that American soldiers have lost their lives, the fact that there have been warnings, including in that NYT article from Trump's military advisor, who made it clear that there could be several casualties. All of this is known to the American people, to Congress. Why is there not a greater pushback? Why is there seemingly not a greater pushback when there is this brazen violation seemingly of international law taking place, or, as I said, the constant changing of goalposts that could involve the loss of lives?
Well, it's not just international law that's being violated, it's the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution demands that Congress vote on war. Congress authorizes war. A president cannot take America into war without congressional authorization. There is an exception under what's called the War Powers Act that allows the president to use force for 60 days without getting congressional approval if there's an imminent threat to the U.S. And the intelligence community has made it clear that there was no imminent threat to the U.S. from Iran. Iran was not about to attack America. No one truly believes that. The public are against this war. What's so fascinating, Rajdeep, is that prior to this war, only 1 in 4 Americans supported hitting Iran. Only 1 in 4 Americans. Now, normally when America goes to war, the minute the bombs drop, the minute American soldiers are in harm's way, the American public becomes very hawkish, immediately falls into line behind whatever foreign misadventure Bush or Obama or whoever it is takes them on. In this case, Rajiv, for the first time in my lifetime, in living memory, the American public has not switched. In the polls that have been taken since Saturday, the majority are still against this war. So he's ignoring public opinion. Trump told the New York Post on Monday, I don't care about the polls. He's ignoring public opinion, but there are midterm elections coming up in November. They were already on course to lose those elections, the Republicans. This will only cement that. And by the way, Democrats finally are speaking up. We're seeing for the first time even feckless, spineless Democrats, even those who are in the pro-Israel camp, are coming out and saying, you know what, we should not be fighting this war. This is an illegal war. This is something that's unconstitutional. Gavin Newsom, Governor of California, very moderate mainstream Democrat, very pro-Israel guy, he came out yesterday and said, why did we kill 160 schoolgurls for Israel and Netanyahu's sake? And I think those questions are going to keep getting asked.
If those questions are going to get asked, what happens next? What's your sense? With Donald Trump, we never know what happens next. Do you believe that he will call a halt, early halt to the war and claim victory? Or, as he said yesterday, this could go on for weeks. Do you believe this has become an ego thing about it? There are lots of conspiracy theories also that about backroom deals that have been struck. What's your sense? I know it's tough to predict what an unpredictable Trump will do, but what would you hazard? What happens next, given, as you're saying, that there is slowly a pushback even in America?
Anyone who makes predictions in Trump's Washington, D.C. is crazy, because this is a man who doesn't even know what he's going to do any day he wakes up in the morning. As you say, Donald Trump could either end this war today and declare victory, mission accomplished style like George W. Bush, or it could drag on for weeks. I suspect I would lean more towards some kind of fake declaration of victory, because one thing we know about Trump, Rajiv, he's not anti-war. This was a myth that Trump would be an anti-war candidate. He likes bombing countries. He bombed 7 countries in 2025, his first year in office. He launched more strikes than Joe Biden launched over 4 years in his first year. He likes bombing countries. What he doesn't like is prolonged conflict, the quagmire of Iraq. What he always claimed to oppose was a long occupation of Iraq, of Afghanistan. He doesn't want to get stuck in Iran, even though they're talking about ground troops now. He likes the Venezuela-type conflict. You go in the middle of the night, bang, 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 made for television. You pull Maduro out with a bag over his head, and you go, ha, look at that, that was amazing. It's like a Hollywood action movie. That's what this guy likes. He's a former reality TV star. star. This is what he enjoys. He's not some strategist, some geopolitical forecaster. This is something he got pushed into. This is something he doesn't actually care about deep down. He's now committed. He's got a massive ego, probably bigger than any person has ever had in the White House. So he can't, of course, look like he's been defeated. But at some point, he will be defeated, either politically or maybe even militarily.
In a sense, therefore, as a final question, if you and I were to talk a month from now, do you believe that the war would still be on? Neither of us are military experts in that sense. We don't know what the capacity of Iran is to hold out. Iran is obviously trying to expand the theater of war to bring in other Gulf nations. As you mentioned, those Gulf nations also stand presumably cruelly exposed today. In a sense, their defenses have also got exposed.
What does emerge?
So a month from now, do you believe we will still be at war?
So not just Gulf nations, Rashid. There's reporting that South Korea is losing some of its American munitions and protection is being diverted to the Gulf. Gulf countries are seeing that America only cares about Israel. Its other allies ultimately will always be sacrificed at the altar of Israel. That's become very clear. Will it continue a month from now? I think, look, first of all, let's not underestimate the Iranian regime's tolerance of attack and bloodshed. This is a country that took 10 years of beating by Saddam Hussein, backed by the United States and France and other countries at the time. They lost 1 million people, including many to chemical attacks from Saddam Hussein's army. This is a country whose religious leadership, as Marco Rubio pointed out, is a Shia clerical leadership which venerates martyrdom, which, sees martyrdom as the ultimate goal. Khamenei became a martyr. They made Khamenei martyr. They gave him what he wanted. So I think they have quite a long tolerance, actually, for enduring bombs and bullets and attacks from America and Israel, especially if they carry on hitting back as they are now. Whether that lasts a month, 6 months, a year, let me just say this, Rashid. One thing I've learned, unfortunately, from my 46 years on this planet, watching wars like Iraq and Afghanistan, is there's a long tail to this stuff. You don't know when it's over. The West doesn't get to decide when wars are over. George Bush stood on an aircraft carrier and said, mission accomplished in May of 2003, a couple of months after toppling Saddam. We know what happened in Iraq for a decade and a half later. We know what happened in Afghanistan. 20 years later, the Taliban was back in office. Some of our opponents, especially in the Middle East, they think in terms of decades. Unfortunately, the U.S. political media class thinks in terms of weeks, and that is the real disconnect.
Let's therefore leave it at that, Mehdi. Maybe we'll get back to you not after a decade, but maybe after a month or so, and get a sense of what impact this war has had, because clearly it's destabilized large parts of the world like never before. And I think you've given us a sense of what Donald Trump is about. I just wonder how you get away with saying some of the things you do in a Trumpian world. But I guess more power to you. You must get under his skin.
Iran boasts a wide arsenal.
Well, some might say a lot about the Indian journalists who get under Narendra Modi's skin. We're living in a world where democratic journalists in democracies like India and America have to keep speaking out to value the importance of free speech, especially at a time of war when dissent is so important.
The gates of hell will
Let me leave it at that. I appreciate you joining me, Mehdi. Thanks so much for joining me here on the news today.
Israel and the United States have both released their
from the conversation that we've had from the United States, I'm turning back home. In a moment, I'll be joined by Syed Akbaruddin, one of India's most distinguished diplomats, who's been based both in America and across West Asia in his long and distinguished career. And I thought we should focus on the Indian position, because India has finally broken its silence on the escalating war in West Asia, calling for restraint and diplomacy. This even as the opposition questions the government's refusal to condemn the assassination of Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. What's happening with the Indian situation?
Instead of
Take a look.
point, they create multiple
Oh my God.
more devastating on the ground. Iran, under intense aerial and pressure,
India issues its first detailed reaction to the escalating war in West Asia. In a statement, the Ministry of External Affairs on Tuesday said India had already urged all sides to exercise restraint, avoid escalation, and prioritize the safety of civilians. It noted that in the recent days, destruction and deaths have mounted, even as normal life and economic activities come to a halt. The MES said there are almost 1 crore Indian citizens who live and work in the Gulf region, and the safety and well-being of Indians is of utmost priority. The MES added that trade and energy supply chains also traverse this geography, and any major disruption has serious consequences for the Indian economy. The ministry said some Indian nationals have lost their lives or are missing in the war. India strongly reiterated its call for dialogue and diplomacy. Over the past 2 days, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has reached out to leaders of the UAE, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Bahrain, Oman, Kuwait and Qatar. On Monday, he had called for talks and restoration of peace.
विश्व में चल रहे अनेक तनावों को लेकर भारत की सोच स्पष्ट ही है। हमने सदैव शांति और स्थिरता बनाए रखने का आह्वान किया है। भारत डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी के माध्यम से सभी विवादों का समाधान का समर्थन करता है।
The Modi government's silence on the killing of Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is being questioned by the opposition. In an article in a newspaper, Congress MP Sonia Gandhi pointed out that the government has refrained from condemning the assassination of Khamenei or the violation of Iranian sovereignty. She said the massive unprovoked attacks by Israel and the US happened in the midst of dialogue. She went on to say that silence in this instance is not neutral but abdication. Sonia Gandhi also said the assassination was carried out without a formal declaration of war. She added that barely 48 hours before the assassination, Prime Minister had returned from a visit to Israel. Sonia Gandhi claimed that India's high-profile political endorsement of Benjamin Netanyahu's government without moral clarity marks a visible and troubling departure. India's stance is signaling tactic endorsement of this tragedy, she added. The government's priority at present is assuring the safety of 1 crore Indians living in the Gulf. Most of the Indian students stuck in Tehran have been moved out of the city. Now, if the war gets prolonged, it will also pose serious challenges to the fastest growing large economy of the world. Bureau Report, India Today.
What role should India play in this war? Will the Hormuz blockade, the Straits of Hormuz being affected, hit the economy, especially India's oil purchases? Is the Gulf losing the safe haven status that it has? Lots of questions to answer. Syed Akbaruddin, former permanent representative of India to the UN, someone who's worked across the region, including Saudi Arabia, including Iran. I appreciate Akbaruddin, you joining me. From an Indian perspective, you've heard the Prime Minister today reach out to different Gulf neighbors once again, Gulf countries once again, spoken to the King of Jordan, speaking to other affected countries. Do you believe that this outreach is the right way to do this, or should we be, in a way, calling out what some believe is now an unprovoked, unnecessary, disproportionate war that Israel and US are calling out? Why the reluctance to call out the US and Israel? Do you believe that's the right approach?
So thank you very much, Rajdeep, for having me on your show. So West Asia is not a distant theater for India. It's part of our proximate neighborhood, if I may say. For India, the Gulf is not a foreign policy file only. It's an economic and human security reality. Our energy flows, oil, LNG, LPG, aviation fuel come from there in significant measure. So any increase in prices due to the closure of sea lanes will have an impact on our budgetary lines, on our bottom lines. And there's the safety of nearly 9 million Indians in the region where we have a direct stake. So India's approach is not going to be a pure norms, values, first posture.
This is the latest.
It's likely to be a more hedged norms posture. And the logic is pretty simple. Diplomacy must be calibrated rather than doctrinaire. So you see the way that we are responding. We are not doing it in a very manner of vocal symmetry. But in crisis, you speak first where your people and your economic interests lie, and where they are most exposed. So calibrated diplomacy provides options, and rhetoric closes them. So I'm not one for having a rhetorical approach.
So you're saying it was the right, because this has become part of domestic politics. The opposition, large sections of it, including Sonia Gandhi, interestingly today, questioning why has the government been so silent on the assassination of a head of state like Ali Khamenei, someone who may have been anti-India in his positions on Kashmir, but at the end of the day is a head of state. That international rules demand that you can't just take out a head of state with this kind of an external strike. That's immoral, illegal. How do you respond? Has India done the right thing by not openly condemning the US and Israel at any stage so far?
Iran would.
So Rajdeep, let's first acknowledge that our ties with Iran are historic, are traditional, and are deep. And many Indians feel a sense of civilizational affinity and strong cultural bonds with Iran. And of course, the killing of Iran's supreme leader in military strikes is seen by many as a grave breach of accepted norms. Now, what the government wants to answer, perhaps it'll answer for itself, because I'm not the spokesperson right now. I have no knowledge of the inner thinkings of the government. And as Mrs. Sonia Gandhi herself said, that perhaps the best place for this is to discuss it in Parliament. But that said, I think the important thing is for us to ensure that we prevent the next strike. And that is what matters, rather than condemning the last one. India is not there to win applause. It has to work to protect lives, its own interests. And the Ministry of External Affairs has already said that sovereignty and restraint and territorial integrity remain our core principles. But we have other priorities. So I think
but there
what
is,
the government has to say, it'll say.
So to those who say that we've taken a picked side, we are veering closer and closer with every passing year or month towards the Israel US axis, that in a way limits our options. You don't agree with that. You believe that we are in a multi-aligned world, so we are having strong relations with the Gulf states. At the same time, we build this strong equation with Israel. You believe that's the way forward? Have we embraced Israel and the US to the extent that we have no strategic autonomy now in the region?
Rajdeep, engagement should not be confused with alignment. We need to separate the optics from the policy. Yes, the Prime Minister was in Israel a few days before the strikes took place, but that doesn't make India complicit in what followed. Critics, crises erupt between meetings. And if diplomacy meant endorsing every subsequent action of a partner, no country would maintain a relationship with anybody.
So you don't agree with the views expressed by some of my previous guests in earlier program that this visit was ill-timed in any way?
3-4 days.
No, I don't think India can afford to be part of any bloc in West Asia. Our job is much more measured, it's much more focused, and we need narrow diplomacy for that. And that narrow diplomacy can only be if we keep all lines open, rather than think that we need applause lines. So it's easy for people to come on television and say that. But
right. So you're saying it would be unfair to say that the visit was ill-timed. We have to carry on engaging the Gulf states, UAE, for example. We're building a strong relationship with, and we continue to engage with Israel, and both are possible. They're not mutually exclusive. Am I correct? And Iran itself. Remember the Chabahar port?
Yeah,
I mean, while Iran has been critical on India's position on Kashmir, for example, or Iran has been seen to echo almost Pakistan's position at times on Kashmir, the Chabahar port was an important access for us to Central Asia.
And his
So,
reply
Rajdeep,
during that meeting with Merz
I think government's actions should be judged by outcomes rather than look at it at the middle of a process or at the beginning of the process. What we need to see is, can India speak and engage with all sides? And that they have done. The Ministry of the External Affairs Minister has talked to his Iranian counterpart. Prime Minister has talked to all the leaders of the Gulf. The Ministry of External Affairs, in its first statement itself, said that for us, territorial integrity and sovereignty is important. So we need to see whether they're talking to all sides. Can they help in reducing the escalation risk? Can they protect their our citizens? Can they ensure the economic lifelines? All this will require access, not alignment. And we need to judge India's policy by its results, whether the markets are steady, whether the Indians are safer, and whether a diplomatic off-ramp can be there and India can support that, rather than these applause lines that people come and say in public, because quiet diplomacy is also part of substantive diplomacy. We need to generate we need to put some brakes on this momentum of war and hyper talk.
No, I take your point. I take your point over quiet diplomacy prevailing over optics. But then when you go to Israel and are seen to be embracing it, almost calling it fatherland, do we have to be conscious that on the Arab street, or indeed even in an Iran, that will be seen very differently? Do we need to be conscious of that as well? That you can't be seen to be embracing Netanyahu at a time when he's reviled in large parts of West Asia, certainly on the street, if not by the leaderships.
So Rajdeep, again, you're mixing up optics with substance. So yes, what you say may be valid in some parts of the world, but I've served in the Gulf. Many of the Gulf states speak or sing from the same hymn sheet that the Israelis sing towards Iran. So let's not be thinking that, oh, the Arab street. And we know what the Arab street in the Gulf is, Rajdeep. So let's understand that our outcomes will be decided not on optics, and give the government a chance and space to work it out. And let's discuss this when Parliament convenes or when there is greater space, rather than putting every action under a magnifying glass and saying, oh, I could have done this better. Sure, everybody can do this.
Finally, do you believe India is taken, therefore, seriously across the region, that because also of the large population that we have soft power across the region in countries like UAE again, because of the presence of so many Indian workers, that therefore we have a role to play?
Experts on their opinions on the current state of Iran.
So Rajdeep, you know, when I first served in the Gulf, there were about 1 million Indians there. Today there are 10 million. Our economy, our trade with the Gulf was something like 2 or 3 billion totally, all the Gulf countries. Today, if you look at it, it's 170. Obviously, we are a major player there. People take us seriously. To be fair, also, India has invested a lot in deepening ties with the Gulf in an unprecedented manner. And that's not because of ideological affinity. It's because our interests have converged. And if interests converge, there are people who take each other seriously. And I think the India of today is certainly taken seriously in the Gulf. And let's see first the safety of our people and the economic ties are protected. Everything comes secondary to this.
Okay. I'm going to leave it there, Syed Akbaruddin. You are a voice of reason amidst the noise around us. And obviously, in the difficult, polarized times, we live in to navigate with quiet diplomacy, not easy. We'll wait and see what the outcomes are. But for now, for joining me, thank you so much. Syed Akbaruddin, on what India's role could be as the war escalates. Now, one of the questions that we've raised is the Straits of Hormuz. The Iranians have been very clear that they're using it to effect a blockade that will affect oil prices and thereby perhaps create further economic dislocation. It's one of the weapons that it has, while declaring this narrow waterway closed and warning it will target any ship that goes through it. About 20% of global oil moves through there, and India is one of the beneficiaries of the oil that comes through the Strait of Hormuz. My colleague Karishma Asudani has this explainer now.
No one knows actually what is happening there.
The United States and Israel's war with Iran has spilled over into the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most critical energy choke points, prompting a surge in oil prices. Shipping through the strait, which carries 1/5 of the oil consumed globally, as well as large quantities of gas, has ground to a near halt amid Iranian attacks on oil tankers in the region. A commander in Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps said on Monday that the strait was closed and that any vessel attempting to pass through the waterway would be set ablaze. For India, which depends heavily on Middle East crude oil, this could translate into higher fuel prices, inflationary pressures, and economic instability. The Strait of Hormuz lies between the Iran and Oman, connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and Arabian Sea. At its narrowest, it's just 33 kilometers wide, with shipping lanes barely 3 kilometers wide in each direction. Despite its size, roughly 20% of the world's oil and gas supply passes through this corridor daily, about, say, 20 to 21 million barrels of crude. It is also a vital route for liquefied natural gas, particularly from Qatar. This makes it one of the most strategically important trade arteries in the world. Most oil exports from OPEC producers like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, the UAE, and the Iran move through this strait, particularly to Asia. Qatar sends almost all its LNG exports through these waters. Even the threat of disruption is enough to send prices soaring. Bench crude has already surged sharply amid fears of escalation, with analysts warning that a prolonged closure could push prices beyond $100 billion. And in extreme cases, it could actually go to $150 per barrel. Oil markets are forward-looking, traders price in risk. When tankers halt, insurers cancel coverage, and freight rates hit record highs. The impact is immediate, even if the strait is not formally declared closed. Indian refiners are considering alternative crude oil sourcing options that bypass the Strait of Hormuz. The refiners are also considering oil on water options.
The oil factor, just one of the many factors that is being influenced by this escalating war in West Asia. Well, that's about all that we could pack in today. It's Holi again in parts of the country tomorrow, so it's a two-day holiday for many of you, and also the World T20 semi-finals begin tomorrow. So we've got plenty to cheer, but as you cheer, do think about those innocent civilians in particular who are today in a war zone. Is this an unnecessary, unprovoked war or a just war? You, the viewer, need to decide. We'll keep getting you voices from across the spectrum. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Jai Hind, Namaskar.
People came out in the streets, the situation turned tense as the police and protesters engaged in clashes. Just across the border, Pakistan reports major clashes across the country. Just as ransacked U.S. Embassy consulate in Karachi, total 23 people have died in protests across the country. Iraq protests erupted in capital Baghdad against the U.S. attack on Iran. Thousands of people gathered in solidarity with Iran's Islamic Republic. Clashes were reported during the earlier protests this morning, trying to breach security barrier in Green Zone, where the U.S. consulate is located. Iran's sprawling nuclear facility has come under attack amid ongoing tensions in West Asia. The United Nations nuclear watchdog confirmed that the Natanz fuel enrichment plant has been struck in the U.S.-Israeli military attacks. These are the satellite images of the Natanz facility, according to Reuters. to the underground levels at the Natanz facility, experts say. Sometime between Sunday afternoon and Monday morning. However, it's still unclear whether the U.S. hit the Natanz buildings. The International Atomic Energy Agency has confirmed that the entrance buildings of Iran's underground Natanz enrichment plant have been damaged. However, it says more radiological consequences expected this coming day after the United Nations agency says there is no indication in the nuclear installations have been heat. Iran says no radioactive contamination detected at the nuclear site. On Monday, Iran reported loud explosions in the Natanz city, raising risks of radiation. This is the second
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@ajtak.com. Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@ajtak.com.
Enrichment hub. It is situated about 220 kilometers southeast of Tehran. According to the IAEA, the Natanz facility enriched uranium to 60% purity, a level technically short of, but quite comfortably close to weapons-grade material. The facility has come under attack. In order to mitigate such risks, Iran has expanded construction ground and greater depths near Kuhe Kolang Gazla.
No city is truly safe and no leader out of reach. From Dubai under fire to Iran's top leadership being targeted, precision strikes are redefining modern warfare and reshaping the world order faster than ever.
U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff has pointed out that Iran had bragged
There was a time when wars were declared,
to enrich enough uranium
when borders meant something,
they could deliver 11 nuclear
when battlefields were clearly drawn. But in the 21st century, the world order has shifted. The new normal is more complex and far more unpredictable. What once seemed unimaginable is now unfolding in real time. Take Dubai, long branded as the safest city in the world. Today, even it finds itself touched by war. The UAE, a tourist favorite, is seeing red skies and rising smoke. Images once associated with distant conflict zones. In ancient times, kings rode into battle and assassination was part of warfare. But in the modern era, targeting national leaders signals a dangerous shift. From Saddam Hussein to Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei being bombed, leadership itself is no longer insulated from war. Technology has transformed the battlefield. Drones, once limited in use, are now central to modern warfare. From South Asia to the Middle East, conflicts increasingly unfold in the skies. The latest developments have added another layer of fear. Reports say traffic cameras and other surveillance systems were hacked to track Iran's supreme leader Khamenei. Now it seems no one is spared from the eye of the camera. Putting everything aside, US President Donald Trump claimed he stopped 8 wars, including a potential nuclear face-off. But now it's clear that his hopes for a Nobel Peace Prize are unlikely. The situation in the world today is not just a West Asia story. It's a global shift, where no city is safe, no leader too distant. The rules haven't just changed, they are being rewritten. With Simran Sarwar, Bureau Report, India Today.
That brings us to an end in this edition of news, but in case you're looking for more, do head across to the indiatoday.in website. You can also download the India Today app.
According to reports, the CIA tracked a tightening security ring around the discipline triggered deeper surveillance. American intelligence, working closely with Israel, pieced together a pattern of Iranian supreme leader. Now, according to the Financial Times, by hacking Tehran's entire traffic camera network, Israeli agents tracked the bodyguards' personal vehicles, mapping the exact moment the leadership converged. Satellite imagery, intercepting comms, and human sources converged on one conclusion. The exact time and supreme leader was spending extended hours official compound. As Operation Epic Fury and Lion's Roar shattered Iranian defenses, U.S. surveillance assets entered compound in real time. Drones provided overwatch. Electronic warfare platforms blinded nearby radars. Then came the order. Precision-guided bunker-buster munitions were released. They were designed to puncture reinforced structures before detonating.
Make your media plans smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices.
Iran is now
Amplify your brand with
grief
100
and
million smart
With the
internet
death toll
viewers.
rising, the
To
streets are
advertise,
filled with
mail us
chants,
at
tears, and
sales at
screams for retribution.
archtug.com.
The man who ruled for decades is gone. Iranian forces have vowed to avenge the death. U.S. and Israel want to finish their job in Iran. West Asia continues to burn in the fury.
This is a continuous coverage on the situation in West Asia,
अरे मेरे भी सुन लो तुम नौटंकी करते हो कपड़ा उतार के बदनामी फैलाते हो कपड़ा उतार के आज से नहीं अब से नहीं तुम पहले से थनंगे तुम नौटंकी करते हो कपड़ा उतार के बदनामी फैलाते हो कपड़ा उतार के तुम्हारे ये गंदे काम नीचा करते हैं देश का नाम माइंडिंग
The hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military.
Make your media plans smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales at archtug.com.
Available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms. From the bustling trading floor from Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asia.
अरे मेरे भी सुन लो तुम नौटंकी करते हो कपड़ा उतार के बदनामी फैलाते हो कपड़ा उतार के आज से नहीं अब से नहीं तुम पहले से थनंगे तुम नौटंकी करते हो कपड़ा उतार के बदनामी फैलाते हो कपड़ा उतार के तुम्हारे ये गंदे काम नीचा करते हैं देश का नाम माइंडिंग
Latest update.
Good evening. There's a massive intensification of operations in West Asia. Israel has put boots on ground in Lebanon, and both the US and Israel are relentlessly pounding Iran. Despite being battered, Iran is hitting back and hard. Reports from Tehran say the death toll in Iran sadly has shot up to over 700 killed. Iran's counterattack with drones and missiles has resulted in the US embassy in Riyadh being hit. Energy infrastructure in the Gulf region is also in the line of fire, is being targeted. Global oil and gas prices are shooting up. In fact, Qatar has suspended LNG production after 2 of its facilities were hit. And these are reports that are coming in from Qatar as of now. IRGC says that this is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps of Iran. They say that the Strait of Hormuz is now shut, choking a key energy supply route. And if the Strait of Hormuz is shut, that's a very major signal that's being sent out. This major signal is going out not just to countries like India or countries in Southeast Asia, going all the way to South Korea and then Japan. Signal is going out to the rest of the world. It's a very crucial global choke point. While America may claim that the Strait of Hormuz is open, but we'll show you images on ground. Very clearly they indicate no ship, no tanker will get insurance to cross the Strait of Hormuz. They've anchored around. Iran is saying they will permit which ship will go and which won't. Very clearly, the situation is very grim. US President Donald Trump has said Iran's air defense, Air Force, Navy, and leadership are gone. He says Tehran now wants talks, but it's too late. US Vice President J.D. Vance has defended the strike, saying the goal is to ensure Iran can never acquire a nuclear weapon. Professor Jeffery Sachs, an economist par excellence, he joins me. He's a commentator. He's telling us how he looks at this war and how it's being prosecuted by Israel and Iran. We'll get you that interview, but first, let me get you the top developments of the day today.
With varied perspectives, expert opinion, citizens' voices, detailed round reports, and in-depth coverage from political corridors of the world. This is Race to
West Asia war continues to expand as it enters day 4. The firepower is intensifying.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall
The casualties are mounting. Neither side is blinking.
breaks it down. Makes sense.
The US warns operations could last 4 to 5 weeks, even hinting at boots on the ground.
We're already substantially ahead of our time projections, but whatever the time is, it's okay. Whatever it takes, we will always, and we have right from the beginning, we projected 4 to 5 weeks, but we have capability to go far longer than that.
They're suffering a tremendous amount of damage. Honestly, again, I'm not going to give away the details of our tactical efforts, but the hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now.
President Donald Trump outlines 4 objectives. President Trump says the Iran war is justified to stop Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, protect U.S. forces and the homeland, ensure the free flow of oil through the Strait of Hormuz, and defend allies like Israel, as outlined in his letter to the Congress. According to Iran's Red Crescent Society, 787 are dead, 1,039 attacks recorded, and 504 sites hit. Israel claims direct strikes on Iran's command center in Tehran,
are yet to come from the U.S. military.
even as U.S. forces are targeting Revolutionary Guard-linked facilities. Iran says the war is in the attackers' hands. Tehran insists it did not start this conflict, as it continues to strike U.S. bases.
We don't seek to regionalize the war. It will become regional simply because U.S. bases and facilities are spread across our region. When the United States attacked us, whether by fighter jets or by ships it deploys, they have access to our territory to strike with all kinds of missiles and aircraft. We cannot reach their territory, but we can reach their bases. I think those bases are legitimate targets.
U.S. diplomatic missions across the region are under pressure. The embassy in Riyadh reportedly bombed. Jordan vacated. Kuwait and Bahrain shut. Baghdad entry closed. While consulates in Peshawar and Karachi faces mob attacks. The UAE has intercepted 645 drones and 169 missiles from Iran. Kuwait, 283 drones, 97 missiles. Qatar, 17 drones, 72 missiles. Bahrain, 59 drones, 70 missiles. Israel is now fighting on two fronts, intensifying strikes on Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, even as the Iran conflict rages. Evacuation orders have been issued for more than 24 Lebanese towns, with Beirut under fresh bombardment. Lebanese media report at least 31 killed and 149 injured in these attacks. The US strategy: overwhelm and degrade. Iran's strategy: absorb and retaliate. As both sides dig in, the world is on the edge. Bureau Report, India Today.
So as the Middle East crisis worsens and Israel launches fresh attacks both on Iran and Lebanon, we are now joined by Professor Jeffery D Sachs, Columbia University professor, and one of the foremost commentators who joins us from the United States. Professor, welcome.
Good to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Professor Sachs, U.S. President Donald Trump said that the United States launched military action against Iran because it represented the last best chance to stop what he described was Tehran's pursuit of nuclear weapons and its backing of armed groups across West Asia. In your view, sir, was there really an imminent threat to the U.S. that warranted such military action, threat to the U.S. or Israel?
Of course not. This is a premeditated strike that has its roots 30 years of Israeli pressure. This was nothing about an imminent threat. This was in the middle of negotiations that were proceeding to reestablish an agreement that the United States had ripped up in 2018 regarding Iran's nuclear program. Everything that is being said is a lie. Not surprisingly, the United States government lies for a living. But there was no imminent threat whatsoever. Iran was under a decree of its supreme leader that Israel and the United States murdered that prevented a nuclear weapon in any event on religious grounds. But more than that, Iran did not want a nuclear weapon. It had agreed in 2015 to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action to put Iran under strict UN supervision. Iran abided by the agreement. The United States and Israel destroyed the agreement. This is a plan for U.S. control over the Middle East and for Israeli hegemony militarily in the Middle East. It's nothing other than that.
That's a very big statement you're making, sir, that U.S. planned this, Israel planned this, and it's for hegemony in West Asia. Because President Trump has indicated that the U.S. has virtually unlimited supply of weapons to fight wars forever and successfully. Does this indicate that this conflict is not, as is being said, perhaps to last for another 4 weeks or 5 weeks and could be a prolonged regional war?
This is a very dangerous situation that could become World War III. Yesterday, Netanyahu, who is another psychopath in my view, I have to say it very clearly because people need to understand what is happening, said that this is the culmination of 40 years' dream of his. That's what I've been saying for years. That Israel is prodding the United States into open war because Israel wants hegemony in the Middle East. The United States wants global hegemony. So that's what the partnership is about. The idea that the United States can sustain this forever is also a fantasy. Everybody is saying whatever they want to say. But Donald Trump, unfortunately, is a deep and chronic liar and very dangerous because the combination of Trump and Netanyahu have set the fuse for World War III. This is disgusting, premeditated, dangerous for everybody, dangerous for India, dangerous for the world.
I'll come to India in just a moment and what it means for energy security of India, Southeast Asia, and this part of the world. But in the United States, is there a disconnect on the aims and objectives of this war between, let's say, the White House, the State Department, and the Pentagon, given the comments of President Trump, Secretary Marco Rubio, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth?
How long do you think Iran can sustain?
There's not a deep disconnect among those groups. They are in confusion because they lie and they don't have their narrative straight. But the disconnect is between our military security state, which runs the United States, and the American people. That's the disconnect. There is overwhelming opposition in the United States by the people to this action. Roughly 3/4 of the American people are against it, 1/4 are for it. They don't have a story because they're lying all the time. Even Marco Rubio said yesterday, well, we had to act because Israel was acting and we knew there would be retaliation. This is so bizarre what they say. When you have gangsters that are making things up, they cannot coordinate their stories properly. But basically, this is a long premeditated war. It took a lot to get all of this military power into the region. So this is not something that just happens in a day or two. This is long planned. And as Netanyahu said, this is his dream for 40 years, and I've watched it close up. Israel has been trying to provoke this war for decades.
And is there an apprehension, Professor Sachs, this could actually go the Afghanistan way or the Iraq way, and then America will have to put boots on ground and decades of deployment, unless, in your view, is that the ultimate goal, to remain in that region, to have boots on ground in the region?
I don't think the American society will accept boots on the ground. I don't believe it. Because Donald Trump is a deeply unpopular person who came into office promising exactly the opposite. The American people see through these lies. This is a war of choice chosen by Trump and Netanyahu. The Americans do not want boots on the ground, and I don't think it will happen, frankly. So what will happen depends on this underlying military situation. Does the U.S. and Israel have the interceptors to, do they have the interceptors to protect the region? Will Iran run out first? Will the bombing by the United States and Israel on Iran stop Iran's retaliation? These are military questions in the next weeks that will determine the situation. Boots on the ground. Trump will not do that except if there is martial law in the United States, and I don't think that that is going to happen.
Okay, because Professor Sachs, Iran's Foreign Minister Syed Abbas Araghchi, he said a nuclear agreement was close. Iran's accusing President Trump of sabotaging diplomacy by launching attacks during negotiations or preparing for attacks during negotiations, and Oman has voiced similar views. Does that, in your view, sir, take away from the credibility of the United States, not just in West Asia, but across the world?
I hope that people in India have learned that you cannot negotiate with the United States. They have no principles right now. They cheat. They do what they want. This is ruled by the executive without any legislative control. Trump operates on a basis of retribution or punishment. He did that with India. He's doing that here. This is the second time within 1 year that the United States said it was negotiating, and then in the midst of negotiations bombed the counterpart. It also killed the counterparts of Hamas when it was negotiating with Hamas. This is actually a tactic a very transparent one. Enter negotiations with us, then we will kill you. This is not even contested. You just have to follow the news day to day. I have to admit, I said publicly, with the Iranians and everybody else, you cannot negotiate with these people. They are not interested in negotiations. This is not about the nuclear agreement. That's why Trump ripped up the agreement in 2018. This is about hegemony. Now, if people want to accept United States hegemony, that's one thing. If they want not to have a hegemon, then it's a different story. So do you want Israel running the Middle East? Do you want the United States running the world? Do you want the United States to be the British Empire of the 21st century? Or should countries be sovereign and living under the UN Charter? That's the fundamental question that is at stake right now.
And that is something that we must discuss in greater detail if you have time, because the manner in which the president of Venezuela, President Maduro, was abducted on day one, and another day you see the supreme leader of Iran being decapitated or assassinated, as Iran puts it. What does this say about rules-based order or the lack of it in the world? Today it's these countries, tomorrow it could be any country in the world.
And reports are now suggesting
the only rules-based order we have is the United Nations Charter. We can decide to live with it or not live with it. If we live with it, then we have to recognize that what the United States government is doing is blatantly illegal. Because under Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter, it says that no state may use the threat of force or force against another sovereign state. This is very straightforward. That's the principle on which the entire rules-based order is found. The United States does not accept that principle. The United States is the world's empire. It believes that the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. A line of Western history that goes back to the ancient wars in Greece. And that is the American view. Even the White House has stated that international law is a nicety. That is the question before the world. This year, India is the president of the BRICS. Does the BRICS stand for the UN or for U.S. hegemony? This is a very basic question. But the United States believes it can kidnap presidents, it can kill leaders, it can invade when it wants, it can call aggression self-defense, and it believes it can get away with it. Now, I have to admit, it gets away with a lot, because countries that have U.S. military bases in them are generally vassal states of the United States. And the U.S. has military bases in around 80 countries in the world.
So let's talk about some of those countries in West Asia right now. Because since the United States and Israel began striking Iran, the Islamic Republic retaliated with ballistic missiles and drones and what is as of now being described as over 25 waves of attacks targeting not just Israel, but also Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Iraq. What is your reading of Iran's strategy of targeting countries in the region and expanding the arc of war? Are they hoping this would lead to these countries protesting, saying their economies are getting impacted, put a stop to it, or will they gang up with the United States and isolate Iran even further?
Well, it's a tragedy what's happening, but just to be precise, what they are doing is targeting the military bases of the United States. And this is very interesting. Think about it. All of those countries, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, these are countries that are home to the U.S. military and the CIA. That's what's happening right now. So Iran is retaliating against an Israel-U.S. attack by attacking the U.S. CIA bases in the Middle East. Now, this is extraordinarily complicated because will the Middle East countries side with Israel and with the United States in this attack? Maybe the governments will, because maybe the governments are all afraid of being overthrown by the United States or afraid of the CIA. My advice to any government is do not host a U.S. military base, because you will be a vassal of the United States if you do. My advice to India is do not join the Quad. India doesn't want another empire ruling over it. It had an empire. It didn't like it. It was not satisfactory. India is an independent country. It should not join a U.S. military alliance. But I tell you, just like the United States believes that it controls and owns the Middle East, it believes that it will dominate India's politics because it will get India on side against China. It's playing games everywhere. It's trying to divide the world and get countries to side with it by saying you are threatened by the other side. It's an old strategy. It's a Roman imperial strategy. In Latin, divide et impera. Divide and conquer, and that's what the United States is trying to do.
Well, India suffered, as you well know, Professor, divide and rule of the British. Hopefully the very important lessons have been learned post-1947. But Professor Sachs, in your view, will this war last as long as Iran has those rockets and missiles and drones, or will US and Israel carpet bombing force the regime to surrender, or perhaps, as the Americans hope, the leadership hopes, embolden the people to take to the streets and overthrow the regime? What's your reading, sir?
With Iran intensifies. Israel has
again, I don't have a crystal ball, but the idea that people will take to the streets and replace the regime seems to me an utter fantasy. The idea that 2 or 3 weeks of carpet bombing a vast country, roughly the size of Western Europe, rugged, mountainous, brings it to its knees, seems to run against every lesson of modern warfare. So, no, I don't believe that a few weeks of bombing, as brutal as it is, as many schoolgirls as will be killed, I don't believe that that will bring Iran to its knees. No.
And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they said that the Strait of Hormuz is closed for shipping traffic. They warned any vessel attempting to pass through these strategic waterways would be set on fire. What does this mean for global shipping, for energy and economy?
Shortly after a series of airstrikes.
I think it is, of course, a very profound shock to the world economy, to India, to Southeast Asia, to China. It is likely to raise oil prices above $100 a barrel. I believe that this is credible. The Straits of Hormuz is a very narrow passage. It is effectively under the control of Iranian guns. I don't think the United States and Israel, or the Arab countries for that matter, can clear the way of the Straits of Hormuz. I don't think that the insurers and the shippers are going to be passing tankers through the Straits of Hormuz. So my guess is that this is for real, that if it lasts many weeks or even months, it will have a very significant effect on the world economy, a very negative one, and that it will be Europe, India, and China that will pay the highest price.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio saying that the hardest hits on Iran are yet to come. He's added that he wouldn't want to give away details of their tactical efforts. Does this indicate that this is just the initial phase of the war? So the worst phase of the war is yet to come? Or do you see a ray of hope that perhaps behind the scenes there could be some dialogue, some diplomacy, some way to come back to the talks table?
There won't be a return to talks, because to talk with the United States is to be killed. but there could be a stop to the fighting. I think that the BRICS should play the leading role in this. This will not come because the United States scares Iran. If the Arab countries make the mistake, which they are making, by the way, of falling under the U.S. umbrella, then they will face continuing pounding. What is needed is a bigger picture to understand that what has happened is a U.S. attempt at hegemony. It's quite an advanced and explicit one, that this is not in the interest of the world, that the United States and Israel need to stand down, that Israel needs to stop wars all over the Middle East. I know that Prime Minister Modi was just in Israel, but the point is Israel is a violent, expansionist regional country that aims at regional military hegemony through its monopoly of nuclear weapons in the Middle East. This is a reckless policy. Israel should learn to live within its own borders, and that would make the world a lot safer.
So since you spoke of the nukes, Professor Sachs, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, a short while back said that the U.S. move may just spur not just Iran, but other countries to acquire a nuclear weapon, because perhaps that's the only way to stay safe. Would you agree with that assessment?
When countries have given up nuclear weapons or given up nuclear weapons programs like Libya did, the United States tends to kill the leader that does it and give up. Iran did not want nuclear weapons. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, said repeatedly in a religious sense, this is against Shia Islam. The United States just killed the religious leader that for decades held back Iran from developing nuclear weapons. We don't know what this means, but it's odd to kill the religious leader that is the one that is restraining the development of nuclear weapons. But that is the twisted approach of the United States and Israel.
And Professor Sachs, your assessment of Europe's role in this conflict. President Trump has hit out at the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer for not letting them use the Diego Garcia base. But France, as of now, is sending an aircraft carrier strike group, according to reports. Spain is reluctant. They don't want their bases to be used. How do you see Europe reacting and the impact on Europe?
The impact on Europe is very negative. Europe just keeps getting pummeled. Everything that happens is adverse to Europe, whether in Ukraine, whether the U.S. threats against Greenland, now this war in the Middle East. Europe is very poorly led. Why is that? Because Europe essentially is a vassal region of the United States. It's almost entirely occupied by the U.S. military and CIA, and governments in Europe do not have any ability, it seems, to speak truthfully. So they have all come out, except for Spain, in favor of the U.S. attacks, which have opened up this new war. But that's because of how vulnerable they actually are, how much of a vassal they consider themselves to be. They do not speak for their own interest, and that's why European interests are never represented. France is a little bit different. France is a former and still wannabe imperial power. So France still envisions itself as having an imperial role in the Middle East, notably in Lebanon. This is not what the French people want. This is not what Europe wants. Interestingly, people all over the world want peace, but the leaders in the United States and Israel and in Europe want war. It makes these leaders deeply unpopular.
6 body bags so far, and God forbid there should be more. I hope not. 3 aircraft lost, fears of escalation.
The mission was
in
never
your view,
just
sir,
about bombs.
Americans, will they favor Trump? Should there be a prolonged war? Will that make President Trump even more unpopular post-challenges in midterm?
Spy agencies were reportedly watching from
I personally would be shocked if Trump found support in the United States for what he has done. At the beginning of this, 75% of the Americans were against it. If this is prolonged, Trump's approval ratings, in my view, will plummet further. He was at 37% approval, 60% disapproval when the war started. He's not a popular man. Now, the U.S. government has not even been able to tell the same lie about why this war started. As you noted, the White House, the Pentagon, and the State Department are all strategically together, but tactically they don't even know how to tell the same story. This is not reassuring to the American people.
Indeed, it isn't. But what would this mean? Should there be a prolonged war for places like Dubai, for places like Abu Dhabi, or for Saudi Arabia? Because Dubai, Abu Dhabi, they pride themselves in being as an oasis of peace, a place for investment, people to holiday. But you know, with anti-missile defense shields getting activated, there is unhappiness, if not panic.
Yes, this already has done grave damage to the United Arab Emirates. It's not something quickly to repair. How can this be the safe haven if it is so easily attacked? These are luxury hotels that have been hit by drones as well as military bases. But this was the place supposedly to come park your money, to be safe, to be on holiday. The airport was hit. I think that this is an extraordinary miscalculation by the United Arab Emirates, by the way, because it had sided with Israel. And in the Abraham Accord, something I found rather shocking, under the circumstances of Israel committing genocide in Gaza, but it made that calculation. Now it's hoping that this war will succeed on its behalf, and this reputational damage will quickly be removed. But it's a very, very big blow to a region that says we are the safe haven. It's not a safe haven. This is an old adage of Henry Kissinger, that to be an enemy of the United States is dangerous, but to be a friend is fatal. And this is what the Arab countries are learning right now.
Oh, absolutely. But before I let you go, sir, if President Trump says that his aim is to ensure that a radical Islamist state does not have a nuclear weapon, and he means Iran, he's friends with Pakistan, which again is a radical Islamist state and has a nuclear weapon. So it doesn't seem to add up, Trump's policies.
There's no principle. There's no consistency. There's no honesty day to day. There's no underlying logic except the American view of power. It wants power everywhere. It thinks that it controls India because it thinks that in the Quad, it can convince India, you side with us because China's your enemy. This is the old trick. This is what the United States tries to do in every region. But the United States does not operate on principle, I'm sorry to say. That's why the world is so dangerous and aflame right now. We have the principles. It's called the UN Charter. The BRICS should defend the UN Charter.
Do you see an off-ramp anywhere in this? Do you see this conflict escalate in the days and weeks ahead? What is a way that a solution may be found? Any glimmer of hope?
The glimmer of hope is the United States says, this does not work. This makes no sense. We go home. The fighting will stop.
So no glimmer of hope.
But no, I didn't say that. I said that the United States could be intelligent. You could say that's no glimmer of hope, but there are intelligent people in the United States. They're just not sitting in the White House right now.
I will let that be the last word on this part of the show. Professor Jeffery Sachs, as always, it's such a treat to hear you, to talk to you, and hope to have you back on the show once again and soon.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Big story coming in from Iran. Israel has issued a warning, an urgent evacuation warning for civilians in Iran. living in and around the industrial zone in Tehran to vacate their homes, to vacate that area will be targeted. So all these localities around the airport, the Paim airport, Israel intends to carry out intense operations in the next few hours. Those living in zones around this have been told to leave their homes and move to safer areas. Major buildings linked to Iran government are already being targeted. Reports indicate that a structure that was used by the Assembly of Experts, the body responsible for selecting Iran's supreme leader, that building has been targeted. There's been another attack in Qum in the south of Tehran. Israel says it's dropped more than 1,500 bombs across 700 targets inside Iran since the operations began. Iranian authorities are reporting 787 Iranians dead. More than 1,000 attacks recorded in more than 500 sites that have been hit. This is information that's coming in from Iran. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he's reached out to key Gulf leaders amidst this escalating crisis in West Asia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi spoke to the Sultan of Oman, Haytham bin Tariq, the Crown Prince of Kuwait, Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Sabah, and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani. And the Prime Minister took to social media to give out details. He said had a productive telephone conversation with the Crown Prince of Kuwait, His Highness Sheikh Sabah Al Khalid Al Hamad Al Mubarak Al Sabah. India condemns the violation of Kuwait's sovereignty and territorial integrity and stands with its people in this difficult hour. In a separate post, he said he spoke with His Majesty Sultan Haytham bin Tariq and exchanged views on recent developments in West Asia and condemned the violation of Oman's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He said, we agreed that sustained diplomatic engagement is essential for earliest restoration of regional peace and stability. Deeply appreciated Oman's continued support to the Indian community. And finally, he wrote, spoke with my brother, His Highness Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, the Emir of Qatar. We stand firmly in solidarity with Qatar and strongly condemn any violation of its sovereignty and territorial integrity. We emphasize the urgent need to restore peace and stability in the region through dialogue and diplomacy. I also conveyed my appreciation for his continued support and care for the Indian community in Qatar during this challenging time. Now, even as Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaks to key Gulf leaders and pushes for dialogue, diplomacy and de-escalation, the impact of the West Asia conflict is already being felt on ground and in the skies. Amidst this aviation disruption, the first Air India flight carrying stranded passengers from Dubai landed in Delhi. There's another wide-bodied aircraft that's now being sent out to bring in more stranded passengers as we're getting you in that breaking report. But I get you more in this report.
The US and Israel conflict with Iran has created a hole in the sky. Hundreds of flights cancelled. Thousands of tourists stranded. The world's busiest airports bear a deserted look. It is considered one of the worst aviation disasters since the COVID pandemic. After the reports of explosions and drone strikes in Riyadh, several West Asia-bound flights made U-turn mid-air and returned to India. In a bid to resume services, airlines are rerouting flights and avoiding conflict zones as safety concerns mounts.
Air India has suspended its operations for UAE, Qatar, Israel, Iran, and several of other destinations today. And this suspension of operations, flight operations, could further increase because of the airspace restrictions and the war escalations that's happening. And on the other side, you're also getting pictures from Delhi's IGI airport, where the families traveling to UK, Canada, Cyprus are saying that they're waiting out here for past 4 or 5 hours, and the flight has been delayed by 8 hours.
28 को हमारा वापसी था, लेकिन हम लोग अभी आए, अभी हम लोग 4 दिन से हम लोग वहाँ रुके हुए थे. रियली एयर इंडिया को बहुत ही मैं ग्रेटफुल हूँ कि उन लोगों ने इतना अच्छा हम लोग को सपोर्ट किया और जैसे तैसे हम लोग को लेके आए वहाँ से.
I didn't receive any notification till yet. So now I have to go back because I didn't receive any notification, anything.
Amid the missile alerts across UAE, the West Asian nation has authorized a small number of evacuation and repatriation flights from Dubai and Abu Dhabi. After the mild breather, Air India safely brought back 149 passengers from Dubai. Meanwhile, Indigo is operating 10 special relief flights from Saudi Arabia to India. As India is intensifying rescue operations, stranded tourists in Bahrain have urged government for help. The conflict between US, Israel and Iran has grounded an entire region. Families of Indians wait with bated breath for their loved ones to return. As the mild respite offers hope, but the crisis seems to be far from over. With Amit Bharadwaj, Bureau Report, India Today.
The crisis sadly seems to be escalating, and how? The Strait of Hormuz, it's one of the key energy supply lines. It's a choke point, and that's now being choked. Tankers have been damaged, nearly 150 ships are stranded. The crude market is on the edge, and Iran says this market will remain closed. The strait remains closed. Details coming up. Stay with us.
Expert recently tried as associate professor in the Department of National Security Affairs. Let me start right away. Trump has said that there was a fear that first strike from Iran was imminent. The Pentagon told a congressional committee that there was no sign of any
and
initial
nature hand in
threat from
hand,
Iran
with the
before
National
preemptive
Green Tribunal
strikes
clearing the
went in.
81,000 crore port and defense project on Great Nicobar Island. A high-stakes debate takes center stage. Development versus a fragile ecosystem. In the latest issue, India Today examines the key questions behind one of India's most ambitious projects. Read it in the latest issue of India Today, Making Sense of India. Now available for speedy delivery on Amazon and Blinkit. Subscribe now at subscriptions.intoday.in.
Nonsense from our leaders. These shifting set of explanations of what we're doing. The comment by President Trump in the Oval Office of his own delegation, in which he uses casually the next leader of Iran, who that may or may not be. It all speaks to the sort of confusion and the lack of any coherence or any coherent set of objectives by the administration in undertaking this nonsense. And I would say that while we, that is to say the United States, are incoherent and confused, I don't think this is true for the other side. I think the Iranians have a pretty clear strategy. They have a pretty clear idea of what they're trying to accomplish, how they need to accomplish it, to lengthen and widen the war. They have this is something that American leaders have shown.
Make your media plan smarter with India Today Live TV on your connected devices. Amplify your brand with 100 million smart internet viewers. To advertise, mail us at sales@aajtak.com.
To exert these pressures on the United States. Again, we think that, just because we've done a few things and we've killed some innocent school children in Iran, sometimes this is going to allow us to achieve what we want. It's a very depressing reminder of the
Welcome back. The impact of this war is being felt on land, in air, and even the sea. This war has now spilled into one of the world's most critical energy lifelines, and that is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has said the strait is effectively closed. It's warned any vessel attempting to pass through could well be set on fire. So the United States may claim that the Strait of Hormuz is open. IRGC says, try it. The ships may be set on fire. Shipping through this very narrow waterway, which carries nearly 1/5 of the world's oil and massive volumes of gas, that's choking dramatically and slowly. At least 5 tankers have been damaged so far. 2 people, 2 sailors have been killed. 150 ships are stranded near the passage between Iran and Oman. Very few alternative routes available. Global oil prices are already surging. Energy markets remain on the edge. Our Business Bureau gets you this report.
6 was the last of
The Strait of Hormuz, the short stretch of water between Iran and Oman, is barely 33 kilometers wide at its narrowest point. But block it and the world economy trembles. The escalating conflict between the United States, Israel combined, and Iran has now impacted the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian commanders have declared the strait closed, warning that any vessel attempting to pass through would be set ablaze. At least 5 tankers have been damaged. 2 crew members are dead. Around 150 ships are stranded. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another shipping lane. It carries nearly 1/5 of the world's seaborne crude oil, 1/5 of global LNG supplies. And here is where it hits home. With tanker movement suspended, nearly half of India's crude imports are directly exposed. 50% of India's oil imports are through the Strait of Hormuz, and the country is dependent on imports for over 88% of its oil needs. Refiners currently hold over 10 days of inventory, and strategic reserves can be tapped. But a prolonged closure would significantly tighten global supply. Every $1 rise in crude adds nearly $2 billion annually to India's import bill, and prices could surge sharply if the blockade persists for a long period of time. India could explore other sources for its oils, but imports from Russia could face US sanctions. Sourcing from the US and other regions is possible, but at higher freight, insurance, and procurement cost. A sustained closure could push crude towards $100 per barrel, raising inflation risk, widening the current account deficit, and putting pressure on the rupee. The closure is just not another crude oil. LPG and LNG are even more vulnerable. India imports 80 to 85% of its LPG needs, largely from Gulf suppliers, almost entirely via Hormuz. Around 60% of LNG imports also pass through the strait. Unlike crude, India does not maintain large strategic reserves for LPG or LNG, and spot cargo availability is limited. If the closure continues, cooking gas supplies and gas-based industries could face sharper price pressure. This isn't just a West Asia war story. It's a cost of living story for Indian households. It's a business disruption story. It's an inflation story. If the Gulf burns longer, India will feel the heat at the fuel pump, in the kitchen, and across the economy. Bureau Report, India Today.
Breaking news coming in. US President Donald Trump has made a big claim amidst the escalating tensions. US officials say President Trump is ready to support armed Iranian groups to overthrow the regime in Tehran. Earlier, President Trump had said that Iran's air defense, air force, navy, and leadership, they were all gone. He said what remains of the regime wants to talk, but he said it's too late for talks. Just a short while back, Israeli forces targeted the Assembly of Experts in Iran, and this was the assembly, or this is the group that's been tasked to choose the next leader in Iran. Donald Trump had earlier said that the military campaign against Iran could last 4 to 5 weeks, but now he's saying people from within America and Israel, if that initially war game, that the moment Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, is decapitated, people will rush to the streets and they would overthrow the regime. That hasn't happened. Now, American officials are saying President Trump is open to the idea of helping armed resistance groups inside Iran to bring about a change. And there are several groups that have been asking for change. There is a proposal or a plan that's been in the works, or at least it's been talked about, to split Iran into 4 parts. Is that what Washington DC is moving in the direction of? Right now, Washington DC says its main efforts are to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities, their missile capabilities, their missile firing abilities, also their navy and their armed forces.
I want to understand from you, are people
destruction, devastation, death. This is how the first 72 hours of West Asia crisis has unfolded. The war between United